Hello, everybody. Welcome to the CertiCraft. We are on episode 29 over here, and it's going to be the last episode that we're doing before we take a break for the summer here. We'll be off for July and August, and back in September. Really excited for our guests here today. We have a few people from Williams Lake First Nation. I'll introduce them a bit later here after some housekeeping stuff and land acknowledgement. And yeah, housekeeping stuff first. Or actually, I'll introduce the series first, then do housekeeping, give people time to trickle in, and then yeah, we'll move on there. So this is the State of Craft. It's a series where we talk about the state of the legal craft cannabis industry, what's going well, what's not going well, what needs to change to make things better. And in recent times, in season 2 here, we've been focused more on highlighting cool stories, cool projects, and bringing interesting perspectives to the mix here. It's sponsored by CertiCraft. My name is Sami. I'm the CEO of CertiCraft, and we are on a mission to help craft cannabis producers transition into and thrive in the regulated market. And we do that primarily through a compliance platform that makes staying on top of all of the record keepings and reporting requirements super duper easy. And we support cultivation, processing, and medical sales. We have a chat. This thing's always a lot more fun when you guys interact, say hi, and comment as this goes on. So please feel free to say something in there. I've just gone ahead and activated reactions as well if you feel like using that. And if you ever have any questions, we have a dedicated questions tab that's separate from the chat. So ask questions that you have there, and then you can upvote questions that you like. And at the end, we have 15 minutes where we will just go through questions in order of most upvoted. Yeah, I live in Nelson, and Nelson's the unceded territories of the Sinixt people, and through intermarriage, the Tanaha people as well. And there's a bit of a fucked up history here. There used to be thousands of Sinists on this land, and a lot of them were murdered by settlers here. And now there's literally less than 10 living on this land here, known as the Kootenays. And it's a really, really sad history when you think of just the scalping program and just the level of atrocity and genocide that's taken place here. They were also labeled as extinct. I don't know, half decade or so ago, right before a whole bunch of major industrial dam projects were going up, which of course is very convenient for the colonial government at the time to be able to get those projects through without having to engage with the Sinixt people if they were officially extinct. And that's a battle that continues to go on to get recognition on a legal level. They had a pretty landmark victory, I think, in the BC Supreme Court a year or two ago, but still a long way to go there. So for all of you here, wherever you're tuning in from, definitely encourage you, if you don't already know, learn about what's happened to the First Nations and the Indigenous people on the land that you are on. Like, that's the first step to any meaningful reconciliation, is to actually understand what's happened around you to the people who were there first. And we can't have any meaningful reconciliation without first understanding the truth of what's happened in our history. So that's one thing I encourage you to all take away. And you're welcome, Katie. Appreciate your appreciation. So with that being shared, I'm gonna make it so that everybody else is on equal viewing size here. We have Brendan, Daniel, and Chief Willie Sellars here joining us. Daniel's had some struggles with video, so he might be disabled throughout this this talk here today. And really excited to have Williams Lake First Nation here with Sugar Cane Cannabis, their cannabis production facility that they've been working on. Yeah, before we get into it, I'm gonna just ask each of you guys to take a minute to introduce yourself, who you are, and maybe we can end off with you at the end, the Chief Sellars, so that you can also, I'll ask you to introduce the nation itself as well and your journey into getting into cannabis. So I'm just gonna go in the clockwise order that I see here. Brendan, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. I'm Brendan Roberts, originally from the Caribbean island called Dominica. Came into Canada a while back and have worked in the cannabis industry at senior level from coast to coast in virtually mainly every province. I remembered when Chief Sellars and his board of directors contacted me, I was actually in Toronto at the time. So it's been a pleasure accompanying the Williams Lake First Nation group as the master grower for the sugarcane facility, as well as the quality assurance manager. And so far, it has been a pleasurable experience, both inclusive and holistic with the Williams Lake First Nation. I will pass it along to Daniel now.
Right on. Thanks, Brandon. Um, yeah, and I'm really excited to be on the podcast. My name is Daniel Penny, and I'm the COO for Unity Cannabis and Sugar Cane Cannabis. Unity Cannabis being Williams Lake First Nations retail cannabis enterprise, and Sugar Cane Cannabis being our micro cultivation enterprise. And I kind of decided to jump into the cannabis industry 2 years ago. And it's been such an amazing experience so far. And I think I just love how passionate everybody is about cannabis in this industry. And I'm really excited to see what WLFN does moving forward.
Awesome, Daniel. And Chief Sellars.
Yeah, wait up, everyone. This one Juhi Nu. Good morning, good day. The sun is shining here. We've had a bit of rainy weather over the past week, which is good for me because I'm actually growing a lawn, seeing these millions of green little babies pop up, and this is someone we're used to seeing on the cannabis front. Fascinating stuff. To see the sunshine is a blessing on a Friday right before the weekend. We're looking at graduation time, summertime. The kids are getting out, and in a post-COVID world, it's extremely exciting having an opportunity to gather and have parties and have play dates and all those fun things. Chief Willie Sellars with the Williams Lake First Nation. I was elected in 2018. I sat on council for 10 years before that, and it's been a very interesting journey for us at WLFN. I grew up on council, also working as the special project coordinator, and I was able to mentor under some really good people in economic development. And that was the machine that I grew up in. How do we provide more opportunity for our membership in the form of jobs, in the form of training, and create these revenue streams so that we can start to improve our programs and services to our membership. But also, a bigger part of that discussion, how do we look at rebranding our community in our region so that people think of our region, think of our community, and light up and are happy and say, yeah, those guys are doing some really neat things. And that's an area that I want to work in. So just the quick elevator pitch, Williams Lake is located in the interior of British Columbia, 3 hours north of Kamloops, 3 hours south of Prince George. We have access to every biogeoclimatic zone within 1 hour. It's affordable. We are a region on the rise, and we also have a mecca of trails for mountain biking, walking, climbing, running, etc. And did I mention it's affordable? So we encourage everybody to move to Williams Lake. We were able to recruit Brennan actually out of Toronto, which was honestly a miracle because he is a super talent. Dan came on board before him in growing up in this ag dev machine. You start to see what successful businesses and what successful industry can do and relationship building can do for a First Nation community. We have a staff of over 80 people here at WLFN, which continues to rise. We have a monthly payroll of over $300,000, which half of it is funded by ISK, for programs and services.
What's ISK?
Indigenous Services Canada, and the rest of it is funded honestly by own source revenue. So revenue that we bring in through our cannabis initiatives, through our other successful businesses like Sugar Cane Petroleum Products, or our gas station, or our company, Sugar Cane Development Corporation, our logging arm. We have a number of different partnerships that also complement that. But the band office is our biggest employer, contributing to fund initiatives in our social development department, in our recreation department, free childcare for members. I mean, all of these things contribute to a healthier community, continuing to invest in culture, language, ceremony revitalization. This is a big part of our balance at WOFN, creating these different niches. It's a resource-based town here in Williams Lake. We historically have been the focus of mining, forestry, and ranching. Trying to diversify that and give people an opportunity to provide for their families in a different way. Cannabis is one of the ways that we're doing that. And we fund through our retail stores and through our cultivation facility over 30 people now throughout the region and throughout the province. And that's something that we take great pride in. And we've had massive success stories of people not being able to find their niche, getting into that cultivation facility and actually sticking, showing up every day, and being happy every day. It's something about growing stuff and being in a cutting edge industry that will, heal a person and just motivate a person to come and, just be stoked on the progress daily, because it's always changing. Brennan will get into it. We always got something for those staff and for the team to do down there, whether it's clipping, whether it's trimming, whether it's cleaning, whether it's, just being a part of the story. And that's a big part of what we're doing here. When we started down this path of cannabis, it started before legalization in 2018. We knew it was coming down the pipe, and we wanted to get into it. We went to council. I remember as a Nec Dev group, this is before Dan, before Brennan, and we brought it up and we said, we want to be in this industry. The first step is going to the community and seeing what they think. Where did they show their support? And we created a cannabis law. We went through multiple community engagement sessions, and the most overwhelming thing about it was how much support we had. The community and the elders continued to talk about how historically cannabis was used as a medicine, and it's a safer alternative to over-the-counter drugs that they were currently buying on the black market, on the gray market. And as this industry has evolved, so has the medicine that's involved in that industry, which was really neat to see. With that support, we started negotiating an agreement with the provincial government. We knew we wanted to get into cultivation, but just like the industry is evolving, our vision is evolving just the same. It wasn't just about getting into retail and being a part of this gold rush. The revenue coming in is going to be massive. We've quickly realized, just like everybody else, cannabis isn't this massive gold rush. There's money to be made, but you have to really be strategic and conservative because of how saturated the market is, and we understand that. And we quickly found out right away we're not looking to build hundreds of thousands of square feet of growing space, and overextend ourselves. We started with this micro grow facility to complement our retail vision and this farm to gate model, and that's where we've been able to see success. That's where we've been able to grow some profile. And just looking at the collaboration when we built our cultivation facility, we had funding from the province, from the feds, and from NDIT. I remember a good friend, Jeff Thorne, and some of those legacy growers are coming in and they're saying, this is unheard of. The government is funding cannabis facilities. What a transition in people's thoughts and the stigma around cannabis. And we're right in the middle of it, and we're a part of it, and just happy to be here to help tell the story.
Awesome, Chief Sellars. I've got one question that's immediately coming up for me, because one of the things that makes Williams Lake First Nation stand out with your approach to cannabis is that you're choosing to participate in this federally and provincially regulated market, whereas a lot of the other First Nations out there are choosing to do things in the red market. And before getting to that, because I'm curious to learn about your decision about that, one thing you mentioned in your first bit of the story that you shared here is that the first step for you guys was to engage your community, and then you guys created a cannabis law in your nation. So if you guys are working within the federal and provincial framework, what does it actually mean when you say that you guys have created a cannabis law locally, and what is the scope of that law? Could you help us understand that a bit more?
Yeah, I mean, it is virtually the same. I mean, there are some kick-ins, and we knew, like, we started in that gray market world, and there was some immediate red flags for us. And we're working with a shady partner, in our opinion. So the amount of revenue that was coming in was a lot, and we weren't seeing much profit from it. But some of the things that really scared us, we got a batch of moldy gummies once, and that's concerning. I mean, because we thought this product was tested and it was safe, and what we're selling to the customers is something that they could also rely on, that it's tested and that it was safe. Well, they had changed the recipe for the gummies that month, I guess, and they quickly reverted back. But I mean, that was scary. So that was red flag number one. The finances were obviously red flag number two. But then we had a break-in. We had a couple of individuals rip the front door of the facility off, take the ATM, which was empty. And although they didn't get away with anything, they caused $15,000-$16,000 worth of damage. That was kind of the last straw for us. We always wanted to get into this legal world because we also wanted to get into cultivation and pursue this farm to gate concept. So when we were looking at the pros and the cons, the pros of getting into the legal framework quickly outweighed. We're in a region here where we have the only reserve lands located in the city of Williams Lake. So there really was no competition there either. We already had established ourselves by going down that gray market route. The market is, getting saturated in Williams Lake, just like every other kind of region in the province and really in the country. But we didn't have that red market competition. And when we transitioned over to that legal framework, we had the ability to open up a bank account, get insurance, and know that we're going to be selling a safe product on the shelves. I mean, those are really the key things for counsel and for our team when we're discussing the route that we wanted to take. But we, again, really wanted to get into cultivation, getting a Health Canada certified license and facility, and be able to make waves and look into the future of where the industry is going to go. And that's a big part of the motivation. The community supported that. That's what the staff recommended, and of course, full support from council. So that's the route that we took, and we've seen success. In our agreement, we have the ability to open up 8 stores wherever we want in the province with local, municipal, or First Nation approval. Right now, we have 4 stores that are open, so we've created this distribution line for our product once we get it cured and packaged and processed. And, as this industry evolves, so will our agreement, because we have that Me Too clause in there. So, I mean, we have this direct relationship with the province, with the feds, because of this agreement. We had Minister Farnworth here actually yesterday touring some of our facilities, and what we keep telling them is, the bureaucracy of this industry is so slow. It's not evolving quick enough. There aren't enough incentives for people to get into this legal world. There's just too much competition, and people are getting edged out. So we continue to tell them, just listen to the Williams Lake First Nation, and we will help you. We will guide you. We will hold your hand, and I think they're starting to listen just the same, but it's just taking a lot slower than we had originally anticipated. And, of course, there's bumps and stuff along the way. And, we probably could have negotiated a better agreement, but there was also a timeline on how we wanted to get into the industry, because there's stores popping up all over the damn place. And we understood, the urgency of moving into it as quickly as it could.
So for any of you guys here on the call, what have been some of the bigger challenges that you've faced since choosing we are going to go down this path of Health Canada approval facility? Like what have been some of maybe the unexpected challenges that you didn't really foresee that have been interesting to kind of try to navigate in your time here?
It's a good question, Sammy. I think a lot of it, I think, comes into the ability to be creative in the way that we advertise our brand. When you move into that legal space, they really get tight on the rules on what you're actually allowed to do. And so at our facility, being the first Farmgate store in BC, they're telling us that we need to vinyl the windows, that we can't tell a creative story about our product, that people won't be able to actually touch the cannabis, that that'll have to be in provincially regulated packaging. And I think that these rules that the province puts on the industry really makes it difficult for small cultivators to differentiate themselves. And just because we have to operate under that legal framework.
Yeah, it's like the alcohol industry, where the way that craft breweries, craft wineries, craft whatever stand out is they have really kick-ass packaging that stands out, and it makes it clear, hey, look at us, we're different, we're cool. And so people who are looking for something that's maybe higher quality, a little higher value, they gravitate towards that. But with packaging restrictions in cannabis, good luck differentiating yourself from Aurora and Canopy Growth. Like, it looks the same. Is there anything else, Daniel, that you've found pretty challenging in your operations role?
Well, I think maybe Brendan can speak a little bit towards the record retention and some of the quality assurance aspects that fall under the cultivation side, because there's a lot of work that is involved in a microcultivation facility. And, Brendan is at the facility every day trying to make sure that all of the regulations are being followed. And so maybe he can talk a little bit about some of the operational details of actually running a microcultivation building.
Well, as we know, the licensed producers have more stringent regulations as compared to a microcultivation facility. But here at Williams Lake, because we know that we'll be under too much scrutiny, it's imperative on us that we operate above board, that we operate in a compliance and regulatory manner, which allows us to have complete good documentation practices, complete and thorough look over our processes to ensure that we safeguard the future of the facility, because each and every employee and myself, I always say that we ought to be custodians of the license, meaning that once you have received the license, the onus remains on the community to maintain and retain the license. And that will go with the compliance, the framework, ensuring that the regulation is followed, ensuring that good documentation practices is done from an operational level, and almost probably surpassing the level at which it is even offered at an LP standard, although we are a micro. It makes us very proud of the processes that we're able to put into place to sort of safeguard that critical component aspect of the business. Because, I mean, as growers, we get distracted on a day-to-day basis with growing, but we need to ensure that the framework for compliance is met 100%, so that it allows us the flexibility and most importantly, when new individuals, when visitors alike comes into the facility. Because I would say to date, we would probably be at Williams Lake probably one of the most visited cannabis facility in Canada as a Farmgate level facility on a
And as the first Farmgate in BC as well.
and the first Farmgate in BC on a micro cultivation level, from officials from either the arm of the provincial government to indigenous and native governments, along as different groups throughout the region and throughout Canada, which makes it in a sense that we ought to safeguard and make sure that we record as well every visitor that arrives at our facility and go beyond the wall of just the Farmgate display operations into production, in case probably something probably went wrong that particular day, and we would probably have to open up an investigation, and can see what sort of corrective action and preventative measures that can be taken. So therefore, being a facility that is so widely visited and growth projected will only get much bigger in terms of participants when the cannabis tourism initiative will peak. I believe that we're poised in position where number of individuals and alike are placing such reservations to come and have a personal experience similarly to a winery, going through the vineyards, going through the facility, being able to drink that wine that you just probably saw the grape from the vineyard. Probably in the future, will eventually get a research license for the facility and probably be able to offer participants and consumers, patrons, probably samples where they can even sample the product as comparable to a vineyard operation, which broaden the scope in terms on having customer determining choices on their sort of favorite strains or the different medicinal property or effects that they may be searching or looking for. And it has been so far ensuring that the model remains in a way where we can safeguard the operation while we continue to grow, not only in the infancy stages, but for future generation while we continue to build and broaden the scope of capacity development and extension within the youth in the community, providing them with opportunity where they can create livelihoods and resilient.
One second, I'm just gonna mute Daniel here. We can hear your the engines around you very loudly, so I've just muted you there, Dan. If you want to talk more, remember to unmute yourself. Sorry, could you repeat that last sentence, Brendan?
Yes, I was saying providing in terms of building capacity and development within the local community where the youth, particularly from the Williams Lake community and First Nation, can learn a viable trade and a skill within the area of horticulture, agricultural sciences, and even post-harvest, which allows them to build resilient livelihoods within their own community, which further help broaden the scope of technical abilities to help operate the facility in the immediate vicinity of the community. This is it's life changing when you get to see from that aspect the critical importance that it has in changing lives, in diversifying the income pool streams and opportunities for the youth who may either probably have been idle, either on the wayside, either probably looking for something to utilize their talent, either looking for possibly new training to get ahead of the economic efforts and reconciliation efforts. But it must be mentioned in particular that even from trying to spread in terms of from the front burner, the talks of reconciliation efforts, that even from the cannabis business community have been so much outpouring with sort of love for the First Nation Williams Lake community right here. And some of the examples that I can come off from the top of my head, I remember when I was searching for affordable genetics to help out the communities, and a lot of the companies and nurseries were offering genetics at an arm and a leg. We had individuals, companies such as Covert Valley, Life Cycle Botanics, that came and told me, you know what, Brendan, we'll know you up there, and we're going to provide the community with the most affordable genetics that we can in Canada. Coming from a First Nation community into the regulated market and seeing how economic reconciliation trickles through different cannabis businesses towards First Nation people was remarkable. Another example I also had in terms of a donation coming from Clonetics Life Science out in Kelowna of over 250 plants, probably with an evaluation of a $3,000 donation to the community.
That's actually
These
how
are
I discovered you guys, because I'd gotten to know some of the founders of Clonetics, and they had a post on LinkedIn about that gift to Sugarcane, and that's when I reached out to you right after. I said, "Oh, Brendan's involved now. Let me reach out to him." And then you
yeah.
guys were all down to be on this podcast after that.
So it's you can see the connection from the cannabis industry even when starting everything from the ground up. I mean, I was searching for some of the most in terms of affordable compliance framework system that can be used to help keep us compliant with Health Canada, and Cropsify came out with the best prices for our community right here in Williams Lake. So from operating the facility on a day-to-day basis, I can definitely see that the economic reconciliation, even if there are some that are very slow to come on the bandwagon, that I have seen personally through the cannabis community itself, have come out in their colors to either show their form of participation, show their form of how they can help with the furtherance and the strategic initiative of the community. Because what tends to happen is that when you have individuals working along with particularly First Nation and other on developing groups, they tend to, as experts, force their form of development on different groups and other nations or other people. But throughout my practice, I have always seen that every group of individuals, whether First Nation, whether underprivileged or minority group, they know exactly what they want.
Mm-hmm.
They have their own ideologies. They have their own philosophies. They may need help refining it along the way to shape it into the vision that they themselves ought to see or want to see for their own communities. But they strongly have a deep conviction as to what is required, what is needed, and the processes to go about it. And one of the where my job comes in is not to sort of change that ideology or that philosophy, but to couple with that ideology and philosophy and see how it can be even more inclusive and holistic while keeping the focus of the objective and their very vision of their nation and community at the forefront. So it's about pretty much more than just working with a group, but at the same time working with a group and walking into the direction that they want to walk in, not the direction that you would like to force them to walk in, because it completely changed the objectives and some of the goals along that line. So that's what helped build and sort of galvanize the communities and people working along with communities such as First Nation and minority groups, particularly, so that we can sort of help further the aim and vision and mission of the scope, instead of trying to downplay their importance, instead of trying to minimize in terms of their significance. And as historically Chief Willers said, I mean, coming from the Caribbean myself, we have our own indigenous people, the only Caribs, and that remained right now in the Amerindians in the Caribbean. And they have also used cannabis as a medicine for ceremonies and indigenous activities and in sacred places within their own indigenous framework. And we not ought to say as a people that these groups have nothing to offer to the industry. We
So
sometimes, yes, go ahead.
no worries. So I want to backtrack to a thing you mentioned a moment ago on, really it's the importance of allowing First Nations, Indigenous people of all kinds to set their own desires and goals, and to then support them in achieving those goals. So Chief Sellars, I want to kind of turn back to you here, and I'm wondering if you can give us kind of a sense of how this agreement that you have with the BC government to be the first Farmgate, I don't know what you'd call it, Farmgate store, Farmgate experience. How did all that come to be? Like, how did you guys? What did those negotiations look like with that provincial level? And then I know as well that you guys are in a pretty rural area, and rural areas tend to have a lot of more conservative viewpoints and people who aren't necessarily supportive of First Nations and Indigenous people being empowered. And I'm curious if you can speak to maybe some of the experience you've had more locally, and if they have also been supportive or not, and either way, like what those experiences have been like as you have tried to go down this journey you've been going down.
Yeah, challenging region we live in here in Williams Lake. Great place to live, but there's still a lot of work to do around that reconciliation discussion. And we understood that. I mean, our relationship with the local municipalities has been challenging, to say the least, and our journey around really anything that we do. I mean, it's getting better. There are improvements. We're taking great strides, but the biggest challenge that we faced, honestly, in getting into this industry, we have a federal land, or an IR, located within the city of Williams Lake that doesn't fall into the jurisdiction of the local municipality, but they think that they should have a say on what we do on all those lands. And historically, I mean, they have been able to knock First Nations down and keep them, as they would say, in line, but the litigation landscape has changed in this country over the last 30 years. Reconciliation is actually a thing now, and it's a thing that everybody is holding up. Economic reconciliation is not a buzzword anymore. We're holding up those discussions, those First Nations, and what we're seeing is this evolution of our country to hold up First Nations people and what they're doing. I mean, it took us, making statements and becoming an economic powerhouse for the region. Over the last 2 years, we've invested over $20 million in development in this region, and that's what turned heads. That's what got people jumping on the bandwagon and saying, "Hey, we got to hold up what these guys are doing, because it's actually benefiting the entire region, and that's a good thing." And they're movers and shakers. They have a progressive council. They have this fleet of staff that is next level, and they're making it happen in a timely manner.
And do you feel like that shift is happening now with the municipality as well, with like the immediate local government, or is that still have a long way to go with that relationship?
It's still got a long way to go. Mind you, they have their election in October, so hopefully.
So just because something is being said a certain way now doesn't mean that it'll still be said that same way come December.
Yeah, and I mean, we're hoping and we're assuming that there's going to be a bit of turnover, a different leader at the helm. I mean, I continue to say that if we don't have, some progressive minds are running for mayor in the city of Williams Lake, that I'll throw my hat in the mix and be the chief and the mayor at the same time and really headlines. But I mean, when we started going down the route and what vision we had in mind in regards to this agreement around retail, and our vision around cultivation and this farm to gate concept, we started looking at how can we negotiate and intermingle the two, and really put ourselves into a position to tell a story that people are going to want to be a part of and that people are going to support, whether it's at the provincial level, the federal level, or whether it's in this industry. I mean, First Nations are in a peculiar place where we do have a seat at the table, because the politicians, they want to start these discussions around reconciliation and economic reconciliation. We have a little bit more latitude in helping evolve the industry. And I think that's a good thing. First Nations getting into this legal space is something that the province should be really looking at and supporting and actually endorsing, because we are helping them at the same time. And as we've gone down this path, we've seen a ton of success, and we have this really cool story to tell around our product. I look at the interior decorator that we brought on board for our stores, Rena Johnson of the Rusty Bucket, the staff that we've been able to bring on board, like Brendan, that help tells our story. I could sit here honestly and listen to Brendan all day and look at, how he wants to not only improve the industry, but really how passionate he is about improving our region and our community at WLFN. I mean, that's pretty cool. We're talking about empowering our people. I mean, I touched on it earlier about how we've been able to retain employees in this facility that they haven't necessarily been able to stick in other parts of what we do. Being an archaeologist, or working at the gas station, or running logging equipment, or working at a mine, or running a ranch. It's not for everyone. But what we're doing is we're finding these different niches for members to stick and find their own place to go. And then they're thriving, they're providing for their families. And when we see people going to the movies, or buying new vehicles, or buying homes, I mean, these are massive success stories, and that contribute to the balance of our community and the healing of our community. Getting into this industry, this cutting edge industry that has brought a ton of profile to WLFN, getting us on the map and turning heads, only gives us that credibility that we need to thrive in other areas as well. So it's the bigger picture stuff that we're really looking at. Cannabis is pretty kick-ass, and I love being a part of this journey, and I love talking about cannabis. And we've seen a lot of success around it because of how we've been able to navigate the industry. But I mean, it's really just the tip of the iceberg when we start looking at the bigger, broader impact it has, not only on WLFN, but the Caribou Regional District as a whole. All these things contribute, and that's really what it's all about. Reconciliation is an education, and we've turned heads on the business side and the economic side that allow us to really thrive on the other pillars of what reconciliation is. Like, of course, education, big one, obviously, but then also, like ceremony and culture and language revitalization. Those are big ones too, and those are going to contribute just the same. And when you can tie in cannabis to, the ceremonial aspect of how our ancestors historically would have used it, I mean, that tells a pretty good story as well, and is why we're seeing that uptake from our elders group, because when we start thinking about how they're dealing with their ailments as they get older in age, cannabis is a very important tool to their health and wellness. Also, very key.
Mm-hmm. So, if everything went I'm going to ask two versions of this question. If everything went, version one, if everything went your way in like the next, let's say 3, 4, 5 years, in terms of how you would like to see this journey in legal cannabis develop, what's happened? What's different 4 or 5 years from now that doesn't exist right now? And how does Sugar Cane Cannabis, and how does Unity Cannabis and Williams Lake First Nation, what does it look like? And then the second piece is, do you think that's realistic or not? And if you don't think it's realistic, what do you think is legitimately going to happen in the next like 3, 4, 5 years? That's like maybe like partway to that vision, but not quite all the way there. I'd love to kind of get your perspective on what you see, what you want to see happen, and what you think is realistic about happening.
Yeah, I mean, first things first, the provincial government, the federal government could just listen to our recommendations and implement our recommendations, which would benefit everyone. We had Farnworth in here, like I was saying earlier, and we're telling him the same thing. And at the end of the meeting, he has a ton of respect for us. I mean, that we slogged it out in the trenches, negotiating our agreement, the first of its kind, that 119 province. But he has become a believer too, in our opinion. I mean, we talk about these things, but we actually follow through with them, and that's new to this region. It's not new to Indian country in Canada, but we always have to do things bigger and better here to make people believers and contributing to that, discussion around support and jumping on the bandwagon, etc. But he asked us at the end of the meeting. He said, "Put your recommendations on paper, and we want to start looking at considering them." They're becoming believers in what we're doing and how we're contributing to this framework of cannabis and the evolution of the industry. I mean, that's one thing. I mean, Brendan touched on it earlier about where we see ourselves in 5 years. Getting into that testing piece, giving people the opportunity to have a real cannabis tourism experience similar to a winery. I mean, how cool would that be? I mean, that kind of stuff is right at our fingertips and should be where the future is going. We are currently working through our processing and packaging license, which means that we would own every single phase of the process, right from seed to cultivation to sale to packaging. I mean, the marketing, I think, restrictions need to change. We need to be able to properly market these products, and that's not just us; that's across the board. I mean, we have some really cool branding that's going on right now that Dan could touch on, I'm sure. Having that First Nation element to it and allowing us to tell our story, that much more and give people that much of an experience when they come into our facility. I mean, that's a big part of it as well. I mean, the evolution where we want to see ourselves in 5 years, maybe it's more, cultivation facilities, more retail stores throughout the province, and then, directly selling our product out of those stores, and then also being able to sell our product directly out of other stores, eliminating the LDB from the discussion, meaning more margin for our retail stores, more margin for our companies, and more success stories. I mean, shit, we're BC Bud. I mean, why are we getting held down by the
bureaucracy
the bureaucracy of this industry? I mean, we just gotta evolve quicker. But I have hope, and I want to see it. But I mean, Brendan also has some really good ideas, and when we start talking about where the future of the industry is going, I mean, here's an individual that has lived it and experienced it for many years. I'm still a rookie in this industry, in my opinion, but it's guys like Brennan that his word is like gold around here in our group.
Totally. And to our audience, we're nearing the end of time here. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask them. And while I'm giving you time to do that, yeah, Brendan, I'm really curious to hear, as somebody who has worked in the cannabis sector in many, many forms, including a whole bunch of different legal facilities. And now you have your consulting firm? Is that what you call it? That helps a whole bunch of different people operate?
It's called what we call facility attachment and extension services, dedicated to assisting cultivation facilities across the Canadian Peninsula. As you know of yourself, of being in Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Quebec, Ontario, Alberta, and in BC, and throughout my rounds in BC in the 2018, 2019, I believe I met you somewhere in 2019, 2020.
I think it was early, summer 2020, I think is when we met.
Yeah. So, being able to comb the Canadian landscape, having able to amass a quite diverse range of experience from multiple provinces, cannabis legal ventures, both on a humongous scale and both on a micro level. The experience has been absolutely unique. But what I can more say, from a micro level, you tend to have a greater sense of cannabis culture. It's something that I have seen lacking within a more larger capacity organization. But on a micro level, the ability to want to do things right,
to care about the plant first and foremost,
the ability to respect the plant, respect the science, the ability to listen to the input of others, because we are aware that knowledge doesn't lie in one person's head. Doesn't matter if a group has been oppressed, a group has been marginalized. It doesn't mean that they don't have something to offer in terms of knowledge. You do not know everything. And that's just how I was sort of raised and governed in my sort of interdisciplinary practice. So I can definitely say that from a gelling and chemistry perspective and respect to do things right, to listen to the approach and to take sort of that sentimental value going into each step and facet of the business, you tend to have more heads sort of merging and amalgamating on a micro level much better than the medium to larger scales sort of organizations. And it's probably because, one, you have a group that is either cannabis, they want to see cannabis at the forefront, they're not in it to either put their company publicly and probably end up selling stocks and trying to make their monies through stock exchange, but driven for the passion of providing medicine. As Chief Wellers has told us that, within the community, you have different segments among its own population, and you come within the senior citizens, the elderly group right now, who either might be suffering from arthritis, rheumatism, and other forms of probably illnesses that cannabis can also help alleviate some of the acute illnesses and provide greater form of relief to an important segment that helps with the wellness and benefit within their community. We know of young people in today's society can get very depressed very quickly with the advent of social media and lack of opportunities and even having access to cannabis over the age of 20 provides them with probably the opportunity to help quail and meditate in a different form that will probably take out their harmful thoughts, either contemplation of committing suicide or creating crimes, and help to steer them in a better form of sober and stable mind where it doesn't provide anywhere near the harmful effects as other sort of drugs that could be pushed and peddled we have seen around the global communities or global village. So therefore, it's just more than sort of cannabis, but it's cannabis and people and culture.
Great.
When you put these three together, cannabis has always historically or gelled with communities. Dominantly, we know of the Rastafarianism community, who have always been forever vocal about cannabis since the ancient times until present days. But once you're able to connect the culture, the people, and the product that is done in a wholesome and inclusive manner, it helps to shed light within the industry. I know that as well as coming up with their own brands, having their own panels and their own people and their own community members doing brainstorming events and holding sort of those occasions.
Hey, Brendan, sorry to cut you off for a moment here. We're 3 minutes away from our scheduled time. Do you guys have like 10 more minutes to go past time to answer the questions once Brendan wraps up here? Just want to check real quick before. Okay, I see Chief Willie is nodding his head. So, okay, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt, Brendan. I just want to make sure.
So I was making the point as to say, well, having even brainstorming activities within the community and allowing them to come up with indigenous name historically that was probably used for medicine that can now attribute it into the branding aspect of the nation's community business venture. While doing it like that, it brings everybody together because everybody feels that they have a piece in the stake, and it is not done single-handedly and shutting out either the views of the youth or the children, or even probably the elderlies. I know within, for example, my upbringing, we were not shut down as children to cannabis. The rules and regulations in Canada, yes, is there to help protect kids and underage kids about cannabis. But growing up within my own community, cannabis was the norm. And as a child, we never partake in cannabis at that very sort of early age because we were not allowed by the elders anyway. But the elders, the middle-aged people, they consumed cannabis on a daily, regular basis. But we were not, so to speak, locked up and not seeing in terms either their usage of it, either the benefits of it. We were open to these things as a kid, and we grew up with it. It's just like in today's society, you don't even need, in terms of you have alcohol storage, there is no safety lock on alcohol storage in family homes. But with cannabis, packaging has to be so safety where you feel well.
Adults struggle. I struggle with it. I can't open like the legal packaging.
Or you have to try to hide it from the kids and not really educate the kids. That becomes my problem. When you're hiding something from the kids and you're not educating the kids, therefore you're withholding information and knowledge from a critical standpoint that can help set the future generation of cannabis and the industry. Yes, you can educate the kids, same as alcohol. The kids don't grow and open the cupboards and pour a glass of alcohol and consume it. Because they know, well, they are forbidden, they are not at that age, but they understand why. They understand the repercussions, and therefore it is done more in a manner that safeguards the household, but it creates awareness from a very early age. With cannabis, in homes, we almost still operate like the legal market. You don't even want the children to see. If you probably roll a little joint, you still have that stigma, even wanting to hide away from them. So therefore, we still have that lag in the industry, and that will tell for greater into the future for advertising, education for the youths and the children. We have not seen somebody come out with probably. We see educational forms of either comic books or whatever for cannabis, giving them that build up for when they get to the adolescent stage. There are so much missing that can make gel the industry so much, but we understand it's in its infancy stages. We understand sometimes it has been protected to allow bigger pharma conglomerates to profit a lot more. But with time, we're hoping that we can see forward change into this sort of channel or canal in the direction, so that all of us can benefit. Where even probably where we can have our drug force unit in Canada going to different high schools and doing presentations on cannabis, educating our future population on the numerous benefits of cannabis and how that cannabis fits into the federal law. Probably that may help suppress future individuals smoking and driving, suppress probably doing things that they may not should have not ought to be doing with cannabis, but
because there's no openness around it. There's all this stigma controlling
exactly.
There's not that
It
exposure.
still remains sort of closed, and we need to get it from. We need to see it trickling down from a governmental level,
and that stigma piece is probably the single biggest piece that's causing a lot of the bullshit that people are collectively dealing with across all of Canada.
It's widespread in Canada, but one of the most unique stories here at Sugar Cane is that we have elders up to the age of up to 70, close to 80 years of age who have taught our facility. People who have come all the way from Saskatoon, and to see the feedback from the elders, sensing the aroma, smelling the aroma, the flavonoids, to be able to interact with the plant on an intimate level, where historically they grew up in an era where cannabis was a banned substance. So to see them at the end or in their twilight years have the ability to stand freely and to help with the medicinal aspect. And it's not always ingesting the cannabis. Yeah. Sometimes these elders may just want to be around the fragrance. The smell may help improve their overall mood, and overall well-being when being in an environment that is bombarded with citrusy and all sorts of terpene sort of flavors and profiles that you can actually smell and relax while inhaling some of these smells. So therefore, it goes probably, we may have to do scientific studies and see how it probably could help TORs and elders into the future. But definitely we want to build an inclusive industry where every facet of the population is either educated, is either have an opportunity to further run, so elevate the discourse of cannabis. Because what I said in the beginning, I'll say it again, we all have something to contribute. We all have something to offer, but it cannot always be falling on deaf ears. We need to find the wider audience and build proper channels and canals where the message can permeate.
Here's to creating that better world where it's all a lot more inclusive and the stigma goes away slowly but surely, and we can create a reality where all of us, smaller scale operations, can actually thrive and no longer deal with all of the bullshit that's been permeating the space so far, unfortunately. In the interest of time, I'm going to shift over to questions here. We got a few questions that I want to be able to ask of you guys before we wrap things up here. Most of them have come from Linda Domeyer. Hi, Linda. Previous guest in a past State of Craft episode on the realities of insurance in the world of cannabis. I'm just going to go in the order that I see them here. First question is, how can we, not on Indigenous lands, support First Nations in this cannabis sector? Do you see that First Nations can help non-Indigenous peoples in this space?
Yep. Well, from the cultivation side, if I would have to speak, I would say absolutely. Out of the two businesses that came forward, well, we have 3 businesses that came forward and assisted. Out of the 3 businesses that came forward, 2 of these business owners are non-Indigenous business owners. But the positive messages, the positive publicity surrounded economic reconciliation and showing the brotherly love and community love to minority groups definitely help to elevate the level of discussion of economic reconciliation, because it's no longer a buzzword from probably government to government, which is from provincial government to Indigenous government. But we're seeing business communities are starting to jump on that bandwagon and saying, you know what? They're a part of our wider industry. They're a part of our wider society. They make up part of our wider province. And therefore, the same thing we would want to see other businesses prosper. Yes, other non-First Nation businesses can prioritize First Nation businesses in getting off the blocks, in standing stronger, and in building better for a holistic and inclusive industry.
Yeah, I mean, a big part of it is going to be the evolution of this industry is going to, be led by these indigenous groups, in our opinion. I mean, we have a seat at the table, which, gives us more leverage. And I mean, judging by kind of where we're at across, the province, across the country, I mean, we're going to be able to explain why you should be incentivizing and supporting First Nations across the board. So what it's going to do is it's going to level the playing field. I mean, as long as they listen, because we have that main line in, the support should be there. I mean, we want to see people succeed. We've talked about it. This is such a cool industry to be in, and we have such a great reputation in the province of British Columbia around this industry that we should be honestly leading the charge, and we should be the tip of the spear when it comes to, how it evolves. We just need to continue to have the support so that we can use that seat at the table for good. We're like a fox in the hen house, I guess.
So Chief Sellars, how can businesses or individuals who aren't involved with government, who don't live on Indigenous land, let's say white settlers in this area who maybe are interested in supporting First Nations, is there anything that you would suggest for somebody who maybe is not very connected into the Indigenous world, but wants to be an ally and wants to support people in the cannabis sector on their journey? What can they do to support First Nations here? If there even is something that you can say that would be applicable to all First Nations, because every First Nation is different, of course, and has different priorities and perspectives and philosophies. But yeah, I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, there's over 200 different First Nation communities in the province of British Columbia. Each one of them is in a different part of their journey as a community and their evolution on their healing path. But I mean, a big part of it would just be, support and holding us up in fighting the fight, because, I think, us being on the leading edge, on the cutting edge of where cannabis has gone in this province, we need the support. I mean, we need you holding us up, and the statements that we're making, and the press releases that we're putting out. I mean, help us tell our story. That's really, on the broader, I mean, without getting into the weeds of how we do that, is what I see.
Cool. So next question is also from Linda. I'm not going to ask the other two that she asked earlier that you already answered in the chat there, Chief Willie. One of them you talked about in your the actual discussion earlier, and the other one is very, very niche and specific to insurance. So I'm not going to share that given the time crunch we have here. So this is a question from Linda about the medical sales and or research license that you're doing, and she's curious if any of the intentions that you have with that is, or I guess you guys did talk about a research license. Medical sales is a whole other thing. So are you going to apply for medical sales and or research license? And then the second part is, do you guys have any interest in working with a research license towards addressing some of the addictions issues that First Nations community face? And she mentions there's a company in East Van that's doing that specifically.
Yeah, Sammy, I could probably take a stab at that.
Yeah, go for it.
Kind of like our initial planning is we really wanted to focus on the Farmgate aspect of a microcultivation facility, really create a niche product. And so that's why we didn't include the medical sales and research license right off of the bat. So kind of the way things will work out for us is the next step will actually be a processing license, so that we can be fully seed to sale, right from planting to the end consumer. And then I think after that, as we look to expand our cannabis enterprises with the help of Brendan, I think a medical sales license and a research license could definitely be in the near future.
Cool. Well, does that wrap it up? Oh, there's one more. Yeah, medical. We won't talk about that because you guys just said you're not touching that yet. Somebody asked about how CertiCraft is working for you. We just met through the creation of this podcast here, so this is the beginnings of our relationship. I will follow up with you guys to see if you are at all interested in considering using our system, and would love to be able to demo to you guys if you are. But we'll save that conversation for later. I think that's it as far as the questions go here. So yeah, I just want to say thank you guys very much for taking time to meet with us. It's been an honor and a pleasure. Brendan, we heard your final thoughts earlier before we shifted into questions. Do you have any last thing you want to say?
I would definitely say, part of the goal at the Williams Lake First Nation community, and we don't only provide employment as well for only First Nations members, whereas I would say probably 75% of our employees stem directly from First Nation community band members from Williams Lake, but we also provide employment from non-Indigenous people within the community, and that further helps to set the mantra and tone of economic reconciliation. Williams Lake did not make it about Williams Lake First Nation, about themselves only, but they have also extended the olive branch to other facets of the immediate and wider vicinity of the William Lake and Caribou Regional District. So
I imagine that's a big part of what's been shifting some of the perspectives within the Williams Lake municipality itself. We talked about this before we went on air earlier. Heard some of the stories about what's been happening there, and yeah, unfortunate that you guys have had the challenges and roadblocks that you've had there, and the lack of collaboration with certain aspects of the local government structure. But yeah, I imagine that what you're talking about there, Brendan, is shifting.
Well, in a simple nutshell, we're trying to say that unity is not one-sided.
Yeah.
Unity is extending our arms and getting, the extended arms of the other brother and meet in the middle. There has to be some form of compromise when we're dealing with unity on a whole. And it's to show that they did not take the selfish approach by only focusing only on their members and only their community, but also looking to improve the overall development perspective, not for their self as a nation, but for also the immediate vicinity of the Williams Lake community on a whole. And I will, from those, thanks for all the members who have joined and listened to us, particularly to me today. And yes, hopefully that you'll hear our voices sometime soon in the near future.
Thanks, Brendan. Really appreciate you and sharing your knowledge here. And Brendan, in addition to his cultivation work, I believe you're also a teacher. You've been teaching cannabis courses in Ontario, is it?
Well, I've taught cannabis courses throughout Latin America, the Caribbean, even parts of here in Canada. I was a teacher by profession.
Yeah.
So I spent almost 8 to 10 years in teaching. So developing curriculums, coming up with lesson plans and courses.
And can anybody, if they wanted to find a course with you, do you have any kind of virtual online presence where they could learn with you?
Well, there is more or less one at, I believe, the Fraser Valley that I would recommend. SFU, I believe, university there do offer some sort of crash courses where you can get a certificate cannabis-wise. So that is something, if viewers are interested in I would definitely, or looking for a stepping stone into the cannabis industry, just saying, we've done some sort of basic training and course and the theoretical component of it. And if you can further amalgamate or reinforce those theoretical component through practical application, that helps you even to kickstart and drive your career into propelling it within the cannabis industry. It just take passion, it just take pride and
And a lot of
dedication.
perseverance in this world that we're in here. Cool. Thank you, Brendan. Appreciate your time. Daniel, do you have any final thoughts you want to share before we part ways here?
Yeah, for sure. No, I'm just really appreciative of you bringing us on the podcast. It's been great to kind of share WLFN's vision. And, I'm always pretty fortunate because I'm often in the same room as Brendan and Chief Sellars, and they're both such gifted speakers that very rarely do I need to add too much further insight. But yeah, I'm just very grateful to be part of the WLFN team. And at the end of the day, the progressive nature of Chief Sellars and Council is what gets us going. And I think everybody in the community can learn a lot from what WLFN is doing as a whole, cannabis and outside of that.
Awesome. Thank you, Daniel. Do you want to turn your camera on for a moment? Maybe we can get a glimpse of you here at the end. Maybe it'll actually hold up.
You know what? I'll try my best. We'll see what the bandwidth does here.
Yeah. And then Chief Sellars, do you have any final thoughts you want to share before we part ways here? Oh, no, it says it's disabled. It's not coming through.
Okay, I tried.
Thanks for trying.
Yeah, no, I think, it's exciting time for the cannabis industry. I mean, we're really just scratching the surface on the amount of opportunity that is going to be available. And as we continue to see it evolve, as we continue to see it find its path, we're going to, I think, see some very exciting evolutions. And that's what really fires us up every day. We're in it. We're being, stewards of this industry, and I can't wait to see where we're at, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and because we're in it, we're going to be living it, and I just love it every minute of it.
Cool. Well, thank you all so much for being here. Like I said at the start, we're taking a break with the CertiCraft for July and August. We'll be back in September, and the guests that we'll have then is to be determined. If you're watching this on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. We'd appreciate that. And yeah, if you are licensed in the world of cannabis to produce cannabis, we'd love to talk to you. Our goal is to make your lives really easy, and our software system makes it so you don't have to think about compliance that much. It makes your life a lot easier as a small scale operator. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Brendan, Daniel, and Chief Sellars again, and Williams Lake First Nation. I keep wanting to flip the lake and the first for some reason. My brain just keeps trying to do that. Thank you again for Williams Lake First Nation and for Sugar Cane Cannabis for your time. Oh, wait, sorry. Before, do you guys have a final shout out? I know you guys have some cultivars you've been working on, some stuff coming through. What's happening in Sugar Cane Cannabis specifically that you want to advertise to the world before as a parting message here? Anybody here?
Well, we have our indigenous brands coming out under our Powell Cannabis. You'll hear names as Knowledge Keeper, Grass Dance, Secret Fire, Medicine Man. So that's just to touch on some of the cultivar, getting an indigenous branding, looking at the medicinal profile of some of these strains and what they offer from an indigenous perspective, bringing these brands into the market. Because in order for us to cultivate a successful industry, we have to look at the segmented in terms of ownership population within cannabis. And when you look at minority groups compared to other groups within the industry, I believe you'll see probably a 1 to 99%, meaning that minority groups make only probably 1% or less. Yeah. And that's where we urge members who are listening to your podcasts, when our products are eventually out, and we'll probably have further press releases and updates to support the indigenous community, we'll definitely reach out so that we have awareness created that it's an indigenous product. You know, we're not telling you just try our product, and we know that once you try our product that we have grown with love and care, that essentially you're gonna come back. And that's the goal and the objective. We leave the onus on the consumers, the patrons, the participants, the customers to support, sample, and based on your review, come back based on your review and share your feedback with us, because we're a group within the community that's always constantly looking to do better, to improve, to grow. And we can only do it with the support of all these wonderful people and the future network within the industry. Thank you.
So keep an eye out for Powwow Cannabis. That's the brand, correct? Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate your time. I hope you all have a most wonderful day, and till after the summer, we'll see you guys again on State of Craft episode 30. Bye, everybody.
Sounds good.
Thank you, everyone.